Awesome. Thank you. All right, this is our final panel for today, and then we're going to break into roundtables. So I'm super excited about this conversation about the kind of differences and balances between holding companies and independent agencies. So over to Tim.
Thank you. Hello, can everybody hear me? All right, yeah, we have a packed stage today, so I'm not gonna be talking a lot. It's gonna be more about you guys. But I definitely know it's been a great 2 days of topics and discussions and panels and content. So definitely want to give a huge round of applause to everybody. I've really, this is my third AdFest, and between the people who attend and the marketing team, and just keeps raising the bar for success. So another round of applause for the marketing team. Small team it's just unbelievable. So yeah, like Melissa said, we did it. This is the final panel of AdFest. We've been through all the topics and discussions, and we made it. So the next thing is the beach and activities and sun and fun. So we're gonna get you there for sure. But today we're talking about the agency world. No AI today on this panel. Hopefully, we've definitely exhausted that topic. But there's a lot going on in the agency world. This year has been really wild as far as brands changing hands and AI implementation and all the things that go along with that between the big holding companies and small independent agencies. And before we get into all that, I definitely want to do some intros to a really talented group over here. And I think we can start with you, Will.
Yeah, sounds good. So Will Ferguson, I'm a Chief Growth Officer, so my role is many parts new business, but it's also driving growth for our agency by driving growth for our clients. Currently on a garden leave from Dentsu, so I spent the last 10 years building growth teams across production, media, and CXM and experience. I will be joining another holding company imminently, but for now, my views are my own and only represent me, not Dentsu nor my future employer. But yeah, it's great to be here to talk about what I think is a very interesting topic. Yeah.
Hello again. So my name is Jeanne Jennings, and I had a media business at Sosemo. Sosemo is an independent full-service media agency. So it's nice to see you all again.
Hi, everyone. I'm Valerie. I lead the paid search practice at Digitas, which is part of Publicis Group.
Hello, I'm Bianca Bruno. I lead the paid search team at Good Apple, an independent full-scale marketing agency.
Hey everyone, Dan Muirhead, Executive Director of Strategy at Hearts and Science. It's a part of Omnicom Media Group, focused on developing media-led growth strategies that produce real business outcomes for our clients.
That went a lot faster than I thought it was going to go with this group. They definitely like to talk. So we're off to a good start. All right, so first question, probably the most important question. I'm a brand, and I'm looking to, if I had an agency to work with, what are the pros and cons of seeking out a smaller independent agency versus going with the WPPs of the world or the IPGs of the world or the Publicis Group? And I think we could start with Will on this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenging one, right? It's a long list of, I think, pros and cons for both. I think traditionally the advantage of a holding company is you have this breadth of talent. So you've got these incredible people who work in all corners of the market. So you have production and media and creative all under the same roof. So when you're trying to solve like a business challenge for a brand versus like a media specific challenge, it's great to be able to go in and have those resources. But sometimes there's a lack of agility across those practices, right? It's not always as clean as, let's just go pull the best people. They've got clients that they're looking after, they're busy, there's firewalls. And so if you don't have aligned incentives across a group, it can be really challenging to come together. And I think the holding companies that do a good job of aligning those incentives and leaders definitely have an advantage. And then, I also get to work with a lot of independent agencies. Very rarely does one group have everything under the roof. And so it's just that like interoperability. I think Zach was talking about it before. Like agility is what they're looking for in their partners, and flexibility to change. So.
Yeah, so I have been in both worlds. I've spent many years at IPG and Publicis and WPP agencies. And currently, as I've just said, I'm at an independent agency. So there certainly is a huge difference, a world of difference between the two. And to Will's point, agility is kind of like this the key missing factor sometimes when you're in an agency holding company, and I have experienced that surely. And now that I'm at an independent agency, it's almost miraculous to me how quickly we move. And our clients are, small mid-size companies, so it's easier for us to move a little quicker, be more nimble, respond to challenges right away, and business issues. Not so much when I was at the holding companies. It took layers of approvals, days to even form an opinion about something. I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying those are some of the challenges I faced. So.
Yeah, totally agree with what's been said. I think on the holding company side, we tend to do some things with a bit more formality. But I think one of the major benefits is the depth of experience, depth and breadth of experience that we have to draw from, right? So rarely is there a vendor we haven't worked with or a vertical we haven't worked in some shape or form across the group. So being able to pull from those case studies that we share as a network has been really valuable.
One thing that I think it's a differentiating factor between if you're a brand looking at an independent versus a holding company, either way, your culture and thoughtfulness is highly scrutinized. And I think when independent, that is much more at the forefront. It has to be, because you're a smaller team, you have to be scrappy and you have to be nimble. So that care and thoughtfulness that you bring, especially when it comes to just connecting on a personal level, has to shine through. And that's also something that can sometimes, eclipse the issues that might arise from a, pricing standpoint or a partnership standpoint. So those are the things that, from an independent standpoint, that you really have to double down on to help shine through as part of your what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I would just say that, it's very needs driven in when you are looking, and again, I'm coming from an agency standpoint, but, taking the shoes of a brand, it's very need specific to what you're trying to accomplish, both at a business level as well as at a media or marketing level. And so if there's a level of specialization that is needed, speaking broadly, more independents can specialize and niche into a particular area and bring more expertise, more innovation, and perhaps more agility than what a holding company might be able to bring if they haven't focused in that area, because perhaps some of their largest clients maybe not are specialized or need that specialization. Perhaps they have it in-house. And so, I think it just is a matter of, do you need a roster of agencies that are specialized, and there's some benefits to that and can be, can have its own trade-offs, or do you want to go with a large organization that has the resources, has the depth, has the breadth to pull it all together, but maybe doesn't move as quick, doesn't have as deep of specialization in one particular area where there's needs for the business. And so it's just about, I think, being very thoughtful and being aware of, what are the challenges you're trying to solve at a business level as well as at a marketing level.
Do you think a brand looks at the size of an agency as far as like the runtime, the runway of what onboarding is going to look like, and what that can be, is for the size of a company and getting started with planning and things like that takes a long time. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm just jumping right in. I think it's very interesting, especially when looking at briefs that come through for RFPs for an agency selection process. You can tell which brands have been very thoughtful about the feasibility and the realistic nature of onboarding in their brief when they talk about their timeline. I think everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so when onboarding, it can be quite bumpy. And a 90-day plan or a 60-day plan, I've seen even a 30-day plan to transition an agency, which is chaotic, versus brands that maybe put a year into the process and they give about a 3-month to 6-month onboarding process, and having it really detailed of what are the core areas to focus on. I think it's really important when doing that selection of your agency to be just thoughtful about the realistic nature and the feasibility of being able to shift media from one group to another, because there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and I think that change management is what a lot of brands are looking for, right? They're looking for a partner to help see around the corner for them, and it begins with that onboarding process. And so if you have a strong change management organization or a dedicated onboarding team, that's what they do, they live, they breathe, they eat it, it inspires a bit of confidence, I think, in the new business process. But I also think it's a challenge, for holdcos and independents alike. It's the changing nature of our landscape. Brands are expecting more than just utilitarian, transactional, again, to what Zach said. Like, I have a lot of vendors. I don't have very many partners. And for us to survive in this next wave, and I'm sure we will still talk about AI, it's like, how are we as holdcos using that to speed up that process to become more agile? I think for independents, how do you use technology to give yourself the scale that you haven't traditionally had, but now you've got the same buying power and potential as a holding company if you leverage it. So, I think that onboarding time is it's kind of the first impression that you get to make with how you're going to be a partner in the business. And you got to do it with excellence and lead the way for the brands.
Val, anything to add?
Yeah, I think, and we've certainly been challenged on that, Tim, in the RFP process and the pitch process. I think to a degree, there's like a matchmaking element of it, right? Because companies often are looking for an agency that matches their culture, their working style, their values. And sometimes it's not the right fit, and that's okay too, right? Because ultimately, if that's the case and we force the partnership, sometimes it doesn't end well. So I think making sure not only that the agency is right for the brand, but that the brand is right for the agency is equally important.
Jeanne, anything?
I remember it used to be that major brands also wanted a major brand name agency, right? And along with that, the lower rates because of the clout in the marketplace, things of that nature. Full service teams from creative and strategy to data and analytics to media. And that's all great. Like in a holding company agency, we as independent agencies don't always get to have that and have those benefits. But we can be nimble. We can work with other agency partners, whether they are from larger holding companies or other independent agencies. So it makes it a little easier to work with us.
Good point. So I wanted this to be a standalone question, but I think it goes hand in hand with this topic. How do the smaller company agencies compete with the resources and the time it takes for a branding agency to work together? Like how can they possibly compete with the resources you guys have to go months and months to go through a huge review or something like that? And that's pretty interesting. Bianca, I was wondering if you could start us off there.
Yeah, first of all, I love the point too about like it's not always a perfect fit and that runway time. And part of that analyzation is when you're working with you're working on an RFP, are you working with the onboarding team, the new business team, or the team that's actually going to manage your business? So that's kind of like where we start with. It's get the people managing your business. As far as resources, we really live by make sure your cup is full so that you can fill your team's cup as well. When you're in an independent agency, you don't have the luxury of staying within a silo of knowledge. You have to learn all of the other channels, disciplines, what they're accountable for, and step in when they need support. So that's a huge part of it, and it really kind of helps blend the team, makes their goals your goals. And as far as key advantages there, you do have to battle with the holding companies that have these extended relationships and like specific rates and everything. So we really have to be extra charming. We have to kind of bring the culture at the forefront, and also, like I said, make sure you're there to support your team, and it's not what you're delivering, it's what you're delivering on behalf of the agency.
I totally agree with you on all that.
You are extra charming.
Yeah. But going back to your point, Tim, about resources and how do we compete, how do we manage as independent agencies, I'm not afraid to say that we do use outsourcing. resources. And that's very beneficial to us, and especially when we have new business. We can't always pivot to existing teams that we have and say, oh, we have this great new business, now what? So the use of outsourcing is key to, running the business, making sure nothing falls through the cracks. But the strategy and the planning teams are intact, kind of in-house, where the outsourcing team is maybe helping through activation and things like that.
So you might want to make a point on this, but on the flip side, the independent and smaller side of things, it's more, in my opinion, a closer. It could be a closer relationship. With WPPs of the world, there's a lot of layers. With Good Apple or your agency, it seems to be more one-to-one. And I don't know if you guys agree with me there, or it can be.
Yeah, I think it can be, and I think the other bit is that we're not always going head to head, right? Like, we're not very often in the same pitch rooms, right? We're not being invited to do the same tasks, and I think you have a hammer and you have a screwdriver, you're not using them interoperably, right? Like, you have a role for an independent agency, and at dinner last night was looking at some great creative work not done by an AOR, but brought in for a specific purpose, and it's tremendous. And I think you can, if you're a smart client, you're going, what tools do I need in my chest, and what partners do I need to accomplish the myriad of tasks that you got to get done throughout the year and keep all of our jobs. And so I think that's where, frankly, we probably end up working more together on IATs as holdcos and indies than we do, taking the gloves off in the pitch room.
Good point. Dan? Val?
I was going to say, that's a really great point. I don't think one client that we work with that doesn't have, a roster of agencies that they're tapping into for different needs and scopes across their business. So it's true, in a lot of cases, we're not going up against each other in the same pitch rooms.
And just to kind of add to some of the points that were just made a moment ago, previous to being at Omnicom, I was at an independent agency. I've seen both sides of it. I've pitched for business in both types of rooms, and Will's right. Like, we tend not to go head to head depending on what the client is and what type of organization or program they're trying to put together. But to the point of how can independents compete, I think one of the strategies that I've seen work really well is to focus in on the type of business that an independent can really cater to and tailor their solutions for. For example, the agency I was at, that was the independent agency, really focused in on PE-backed challenger brands, which is not every brand is not a challenger brand. Not every brand has the type of deep pockets that PE brings to drive aggressive growth. And they said no to a lot of RFPs because it wasn't the right DNA of the company that they've built in their culture at the agency to be able to respond and tailor their solutions for that particular type of brand. Now, just because you narrow in doesn't mean that you have to be super niched into a particular vertical category or subcategory of an industry. There was still a breadth of different type of brands there, but it was really about the DNA of the company that was bringing in an agency partner, being like for like, which speaks more to the point that Valerie was making of, not every brand is the right brand for you as an agency and vice versa. And then just one more thing to add as well, for growth for like an independent agency, there are partnerships that can be brokered with the larger holdcos. That brand in particular, or that agency in particular, we did actually do partnerships with Omnicom, which is actually how my track actually led into Omnicom, because we partnered on a very large piece of business that did need some specialization that was lacking at the company at the holdco level. So they, having those type of partnerships can bring a bit of the best of both worlds and having an IAT roster approach.
And the other thing I'll add is, I think it's a great point about like a challenger brand or PE-backed brands. Like, they're looking for some level of stability, and if you've read the news, holdcos are merging, holdcos are for sale, there's transformation happening at others. Like, it's not a beacon of stability all the time. And so, I've been told by a prospective client once, how can you transform my business when you're busy transforming your own? And it's a sticking point, right? So it's not for every brand. Like, being at a holdco might not be the right time for you. And you also don't always want to be client 30 on someone's roster, right? You want to be the shining light. And so it's a huge challenge for us when we go into pitch rooms for maybe not the largest brand. It's nice to throw the logo slide up, but if you're a smart CMO, you're going, am I going to be forgotten? Can I call you in the middle of the night? Are you going to pick up? Or are you going to be busy with the Pepsis of the world, right?
Do you think there could be more pressure if a brand were to choose a larger agency? And what comes with that? What comes with the WPP name or the publicist name or the IPG name, as opposed to an independent?
I mean, I think there's always going to be pressure to perform, and I think it does play a role. And I, having represented holdcos, like I'll lean into that because it is a risky decision. And as a CMO, you've got a pretty tight window to make an impact, right? And making that agency decision, change is hard, it's painful. If you're going to change your agency out and potentially handcuff your business for a couple months, if that's the wrong pick, you're out. And so it can be a bit more of a safety feeling to go to a holding company because no one's going to criticize you for picking Publicis. But again, is that the right partner for you in that moment in your brand's journey? You have to understand that.
Yeah, and I would just tack on to that, like, I think the expectations are generally higher for holdcos. There's just, especially, most holdco pitches are well-rehearsed, polished pitches. They have it down in such a way that it does also meet the expectations of what you would expect from a holdco. But I wouldn't necessarily say there always comes that pressure. Like it depends on the culture of the brand itself, and how aggressive are they trying to grow, or are they trying to maintain status quo to some extent. Honestly, I think that in the independent space, there's actually perhaps more pressure. At least in my experience, there's just less runway. There's higher stakes. You're typically not working, with the PepsiCos of the world at that point. So there is generally more pressure, in my experience, at the independent level, but higher expectations at the holdco level.
I would add to that too that I think some clients feel or brands feel like they can push on holdcos a little bit more than maybe they can on independent agencies, right? Be it on price, resources, SLAs, because they know that holdcos have a buffer of having, a pretty deep client roster. They, maybe there's a bench. There's also all the other agencies within the holdco. So I think they feel like maybe they can ask for more, or something that they may not ask for from an independent agency.
That's so true. Yeah, and I will say too that there is access to senior leadership whenever things go wrong, and when things go right too, at the independent agencies. And a lot of brands like that they can have quick, conversations, access to senior leadership when they have to. They don't always get that from the holdcos, right?
I actually feel like the pressures exist no matter what. Like either way, it's like if you're coming in independent, it's like, well, this, holding company said this is why we went with you, because you guys were scrappy, you could figure it out. But then also, to your point earlier, there has to be a addressing of, okay, you won the business, how much you offshoring, how much you optimizing by this one person that I know killed it in the pitch. Like those sort of things add to that as well.
Great answers. It would have been great to have an hour with you guys. A lot to say. I did want to leave out time for some questions. A couple folks, I've been talking about this panel the last couple days, and I believe there are some out there that do have questions for you guys. So I just wanted to leave a little time to get that.
Great, we got a live question.
Everybody who works at an agency is going to grill us now.
Right.
I'm one of them, so
Knew it.
Buckle in.
Hi, I'm Simona. I work at Media Hub under IPG, and I've been at IPG for 10 years, so a decade. And Will, you are the winner in my book because you hit on the fun, awkward elephant in the room, which is two big holding companies merging. So I ask each of you guys, more so for the brands in the room and for the agency folks and so on, like what piece of advice do you have for those that may be impacted, whether that is, individuals like myself that are at the holding company, or for the brands that, we service?
I mean, change is the only constant, right, in our industry. And personal advice to human would be like persevere, right? Like keep your head up high and and do things like this, be present in the industry, be a student of our craft. And then from a brand perspective, it's that we will come out the other end of this, right? Like, these are the ebbs and the flows. Publicis has spent a lot of time winning. There are times when they haven't spent a lot of time winning. Dentsu, we were the belle of the ball for a few years. These are the cycles that we go through. I think it always feels super challenging in the moment, but coming out of this, hopefully, our industry is a little bit cleaner, a little bit smarter. We service brands better, and we come out again more as partners and less as vendors, right? Like, we have to decommoditize the agency space and push back on those scope creeps and price creeps, and exchange value, right? We're not just buying ads; we're giving value back to brands and building those relationships with consumers. And there's a lot of reverence for that, right? There's a lot of equity in these brands that we're trusted to carry forward. So, I think persevere as an individual and keep an eye on the future for a brand level, right? There's more to come.
Yeah, and I'll jump on and kind of echo what Chrissy was saying earlier. Is to innovate against yourself, right? And we can talk about AI right now, and a lot of people are focused on that. And where is that going? How does that apply to your particular discipline within the agency space? But as you continue to learn, that could be valuable for the holdco that you're in, or it could be valuable for an independent or even a startup that's getting into the space, and you can bring that knowledge and also that valuable expertise that you've built up over the years into a space that will be valued more than in a holdco that as it's going through a transition, very financially driven decisions are being made around staff and redundancies and things of that nature. And so to bring more value, to be seen more value, maybe change the space, proactively that you're in to be able to be seen as more valuable. So.
One thing I'll add really quickly, I know we're super over time, is I've done both. So I'm at independent, but I've worked at huge companies and gone back and forth. But I will say personality goes a long way. So are you being heard in your position? And is your personality of your agency coming through? If you win a new client, are you visiting their stores? Are you buying their products? Are you engaging with their their clientele? All of that really should shine through from a personality and a character perspective.
Anthony.
Hi, I'm Anthony from Starcom. Seeing holding companies and independents, I want to kind of understand the different perspectives of talent retainment and growth, and secondarily, kind of some along the line question of productivity and return to office policy. I know a lot of agencies have had different policies in regards to that, and how it's kind of coming along with the difference between holding and independents.
Good question.
We are not mandated yet to RTO, which is great. So, I do go to the office for meetings and just for culture, really, to see my team, but we're not mandated yet. And I think the second part of your question is, how do we manage,
Talent retention.
What is it?
Talent retention.
Oh, yeah. So definitely, that's we prioritize talent and retention, especially when we have such great teams and we all work well together. And we're such a small team that it's easy to, for example, as a leader, for me to give attention to a more junior team member who's kind of looking for, more mentoring opportunities and things like that. So that's not hard at all. And it's just an easy, Slack or text away, and we could all be in the room together, discussing things. And I think that's a key and a vital part of talent retention is your access to the subject matter experts in your team or your leadership, so to feel like you're in a collaborative space, and it's also kind of retaining your independence in your work.
I'll say from the holding company side of things, one of the most challenging things, but I think very important things, is how do you preserve the unique culture of the agency that lives within the holding company, right? Like, what makes Digitas a great place to work versus Razorfish versus Starcom, and how do you make sure that your employees feel that every day, so that they continue to want to work there? Because when it comes to recognition, especially, financial recognition, title change, et cetera, it's super challenging when you're a part of a holding company, because you're not just responsible for the finances of your department or your agency or your office, right? You're kind of in the mix with the finances of all of the agencies that belong to that holding company, and that has an impact on budgets for promotions, et cetera. So it can be a really challenging thing to retain talent from that perspective. So I think we try to over-index on the culture side of things so that we can buy a little time to where the finances work out. But it's an ongoing challenge.
And I do think the holding companies provide opportunity, right? Like I entered Dentsu as a paid social buyer, and I just ran growth for a production agency. That's insane. It's an insane career journey that you're not going to get unless you've got these capabilities. And like I'm grateful for all the steps in between, but a million guesses I would have never been there. So I think if you're at a holding company, you have that advantage, like lean into that. Like make sure that you expose people to new things. Just the way they entered may not be the way they want to leave. And then the return to office, listen, I got 2 young kids. I like being home. But the unpopular opinion is the best work is made collaboratively in the room. And like we are in the relationship business, it is very hard to build relationships behind screens internally and externally. Like you want to be customer zero for your clients. It's a great point. Like use the product, get in the stores. You cannot do that from your living room, right? It's not the way forward. And I think you see the winning teams right now are in offices, right? They're in offices more than they're not. And I think it's the path forward. Like we have to get back to bringing that creative craft, and it's only going to happen in a room, brains together. I don't know a way that remote teams win in the future. It's going to be hard.
Great. So we have one final question here from Jeff.
Hey guys, powerhouse panel, so well done. So having also built and part of UM and Reprise as well, there's a big trend that we've seen as well with shifting and evolving teams at agencies getting embedded at clients for services like SEO, like content, like social. And then also just, some really brands are kind of making the move to pull certain services in-house and then really kind of amp up other services like TV, broad buying, even like tentpole creative events. So just kind of curious on those two things and kind of your perspective and what are you guys seeing?
I mean, I think it's smart for any agency to have an in-housing capability, right? Like it is, again, part of the future as clients want to bring things closer to the center, and I think it is smart, and that's the changing landscape of agencies, right? Like we are going up against consultancies more than we're going up against agencies at times, and like if we're going to survive and thrive through all this chaos that's happening, we have to be trusted advisors, not just media buyers or creative, makers. And so having in-housing units and that expertise, I think, is a really critical skill. Coming from the production side, it's half the business is setting up internal studios, and to your point, you're seeing it now in certain specialties in media more and more.
I will say, in my experience, I've seen it's been pretty cyclical, and I don't think that that's just like trying to be optimistic when we see a big client take something in-house. My experience has been that typically when that happens, within the same year, we get an opportunity to pitch a client that's going from in-house to looking to transition to an agency. So ultimately, I think the balance has been kind of neutral. Like I can't say that I've seen a trend where like, oh yeah, we have a bunch of clients taking this capability in-house. You kind of get as many as you lose in a year, and so we're grateful for that. Obviously, we'd love to get more than we lose, but at this point, the net zero effect is okay. In terms of certain capabilities that I think are very, and this is the only time I'm going to mention AI, Tim, because I know Tim did not want to talk about AI on this panel. That's one where I think companies are having a hard time from an optimization standpoint, and this leans a little bit more SEO, but developing that in-house because there's so much unknown. So that's been an interesting one where we're getting a lot of like, even just project-based inquiries about how we can help companies kind of find their way there. And I think that they're maybe a little bit afraid to stand that up in-house so early in the development of that tech.
That's really important, like the support portion. I will say that we've had, I'm sure everyone's had experiences where you've done a media plan and they're like, thank you for all those great ideas. We're going to go take that in-house now. So the opportunity that allows you is your agency's proprietary products, which I'm surprised hasn't been mentioned more, because it's kind of an arms race of who's going to have the best AI, data tool, whatever tool. But that's kind of like your yes and you like next thing, focus on what else we can do to support their in-house.
And the unsaid thing, right, is that we're all building the same things.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, to a large extent. I mean, look, we're all responding to the market opportunity, and there's very clear signals of where to play right now. Now, what I would say though is I personally believe that there are certain functions that are inherently best done either in-house or either with an agency. For example, paid media, is just inherently better through an agency. You're not going to get a better deal as a brand by yourself. The collective spending and bargaining power of an agency is at your benefit. Content creation, and I don't know how many content marketers we have here, but I would say inherently is best in-house. You're closer to the brand. There's plenty of ways to innovate and experiment in that space that a brand can be very free to do. But I would also say to any agency, holdco or independent alike, to not be afraid of in-housing. I think that there's a track there to help that transition process for a brand that firmly believes that they want to in-house one element or one function of their marketing program in-house for whatever reason. There's always different drivers behind the reason to do it. But to continue to be a partner there. And what I've seen is, as you stay by your client's side and consult with them and help them transition into that, sometimes they understand, oh, this is a bit bigger than I thought it was. There's a bit more nuance here than I thought it was. So we actually don't have the right capabilities or person or team to do this. And may backtrack. And maintaining that relationship and that partnership can lead to unknown places, to where there's now greater trust because, they made a decision and you didn't just abandon them as an agency because they wanted to go in-house and you took it as an affront. You actually helped them through that process, and perhaps there's another way to engage that creates more value for both brands. So I would just say, keep an open mind around in-housing and find the right path forward for a way to create value for both the brand and the agency side.
This has been a great panel, and Val, in regards to the AI comment, I think the human element still is the most important thing. This conference shows that, obviously, everybody being together. And really thankful and grateful for you guys to be up here and everybody for their panels over the last 2 days. So thanks, everyone, and round of applause.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Jeff said it best with Powerhouse Panel. So if you'll exit here and take a picture, that would be awesome. All right, folks, we made it to break, so I'm just going to hop up here. Like yesterday, I'll invite everyone to just take a step outside so we can set up for the roundtables, and then we're off to lunch. So thanks. I think we're going to try to keep this tight, around 10 minutes, so